Hi everybody, it's Dr. Eudene. Now, if you've ever had trouble sleeping, you've probably heard, please do not consume any caffeinated beverages after 2 p.m. And if you're like my kids, the response will be, but why? But why? But why? So today I want to talk about the relationship between caffeine and sleep. Hi everybody, it's Dr. Eudene. I'm a holistic medical strategist and a practicing integrative physician. So let's talk a little bit about the relationship of caffeine and sleep. Now, we know that caffeine is present in a lot of what we drink, right? So coffee has naturally occurring caffeine, so does tea. We also know that some beverages, a lot of beverages are actually made with caffeine. So we have a lot of caffeinated beverages as well. So it's in a lot of beverages, and the idea is that it gives us a quick pick-me-up. Now, while coffee does naturally occur in coffee and tea, coffee tends to have a little bit more caffeine than tea does. And of course, if you're drinking those energy drinks, they usually really contain a lot of caffeine. So we know that caffeine does boost our alertness. There's never been any disagreement about that. However, it's the same property of caffeine that can actually negatively impact our sleep. So let's really delve into why that happens. So in order to talk about why, at least one of the reasons why that is, we need to talk about the impact of caffeine on the brain. So when we drink a cup of coffee, it's usually absorbed into our bloodstreams, right? So coffee can get absorbed by our stomach or small intestine. It goes into our bloodstream and it actually crosses into the brain. It's one of the few things that actually just kind of crosses happily over into the brain, and it can give us a sense of alertness. But how does that work? Like, how does it give us a sense of alertness? Well, in order to understand that, we need to understand a little bit about what goes on in the brain. See, the brain makes this chemical called adenosine. And what adenosine does, while we awake, the more adenosine the brain produces. And when it gets to a certain level of adenosine, then the adenosine starts acting on the receptors in the brain and actually starts making us sleepy and start winding us down, and it starts making us tired. What caffeine does is caffeine crosses into the brain and it blocks those receptors and stops that from happening. So it stops the effect of adenosine on the brain. So while we're alert and we're producing more and more adenosine, the problem is when we drink coffee, it interferes with the ability of adenosine to calm us down. And adenosine has a relatively short half-life. What does that mean? Means once adenosine is made, it doesn't really last that long. So it goes out pretty quickly. Now, when you're thinking about caffeine or coffee, one of the ways that the half-life of coffee is actually about 4 to 6 hours. What that means is that it takes about 4 to 6 hours for the body to kind of get rid of at least half of the coffee that we've ingested. So what that equates to is that the effects of coffee actually can last about up to 6 hours, and sometimes even longer in certain susceptible individuals. So that is the reasoning behind not drinking coffee after 2 p.m. so that we're able to start unwinding at about 8 or 9 p.m. because it's usually at that time as well when our melatonin level, another sleep hormone, starts gradually increasing as well. So we have the high adenosine that's kind of calming us down, and then we have the addition of melatonin that acts additionally to kind of induce that calm, restful state in which we can more easily fall asleep and stay asleep. So what happens, what happens when the adenosine receptors are blocked? Like what kind of impact does caffeine have on our sleep itself? Well, the impact that caffeine has is that it might actually interrupt our slow sleep or a deep sleep. Our slow sleep is that state where we're actually in this really deep sleep, where then we're able to kind of reset our body's rhythm, and it's a rejuvenative sleep. And caffeine can actually interfere with that and create more of a light sleep, so that the next day we end up feeling not as well rested. We might be more unfocused, not be able to concentrate, etc. Now, we all know when we don't sleep well, that then can start increasing our risk of chronic illnesses, like we talked about before. Can have an increased risk of diabetes, increased risk of cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, and increasing our risk of inflammation, which can then lead to difficulty losing weight and might actually make it easier for us to gain weight. So when we drink caffeine before bed, by at least 6 hours, longer for some of us, what we might be doing is interfering with the natural rhythm of our body and throwing our body's circadian rhythm off kilter, therefore making it more challenging for our body to keep its natural sleep rhythm and making us more tired the next day. So when we drink a cup of caffeinated beverage, coffee or tea, etc., when do we start feeling the effects of the caffeine? That can usually occur anywhere from 30 to 20 minutes. In some individuals, it's sooner than that. But again, remember, it takes at least 6 hours in order to get the caffeine in our body low enough so it doesn't impact our sleep. So the takeaway point to all of this is that caffeine may give us a quick pick-me-up, a quick boost in alertness and our ability to focus. But if we do it in excess, it may interfere with our ability to be able to sleep and interfere with our sleep pattern. And that may ultimately end up affecting our day-to-day function. So that, my friends, is the connection between caffeine and sleep. See you next time.